Alrighty, hello everybody and welcome to another science class. We are starting a brand new unit. We just tested last Friday, took an assessment on the 4 spheres of the Earth. So we've spent the last couple months, several weeks, on the 4 spheres, the geosphere, the hydrosphere, the atmosphere, and the biosphere. We are going to continue talking a little bit about the biosphere, although it's going to be its own separate unit. So our focus for the next 2 weeks is going to be the biomes of the Earth. Okay, so today's just a little introduction, and your objective is I can define biome, tell me what is a biome, and identify the different types of biomes on Earth. So let's dive right in. First question, what is a biome, or what are biomes? So a biome is a large area on Earth with its own unique combination of plants, animals, climate patterns, and landscapes. So they're basically different regions on the Earth. First thing I want you to pay attention to are these words, large area. It's a large area. So that means a biome is much larger than just a habitat. Right? It's bigger than your backyard. It's bigger than the park down the street, right? It's sometimes bigger than a city, right? It's a very large area. So a biome would be a whole entire region on a map, like a forest, a desert, an entire grassland, or an entire plain. So when you look at the map of the Earth, you can see biomes from space, these large regions of different types of plants and animals and climate. Right? So here you can see the deserts, and that looks very different from the forests up in Europe, and that looks different from the tundra up here in Greenland, which looks different from the plains over here in the United States. And you can tell a lot, even from space, of the different types of vegetation and the different amounts of rainfall, and what the landscape looks like, even just by looking at the colors from space. So a biome is really a very, very big area. The next word I want you to pay attention to is unique. What does unique mean? So unique means special or individual, right? So each biome has its own traits, its own special qualities or characteristics. And we classify biomes based on these 4 things: the type of plants, the type of animals, the type of climate patterns. So climate really means weather, right? The weather patterns. So not just the weather on one day, but how the weather acts all throughout the year, right? How hot or cold it gets, how much it rains or snows. So that kind of thing. And then landscapes. What does the land look like? Are there big rocky formations? Is it mostly flat, mostly steep, kind of hilly, right? So, scientists don't always agree on how many biomes there are on Earth. As you can imagine, sometimes it gets hard to distinguish between biomes, right? There's not really hard lines in between different biomes. There's some gray areas where maybe a forest kind of looks a little bit like a grassland, or maybe, a tundra kind of looks a little bit like a forest. So there's overlap in the type of plants and animals that live in different biomes, right? So some scientists say that there are 19 different biomes, and they are classifying them by really specific considerations, right? Really specific combinations of plants and animals and climate. And then there are scientists who look at it more broadly and say that there are only, 7 or 9 or 5 biomes. So we are going to talk today about 5 major biomes. Okay, and you'll see as we're talking about them that each one can be split into more specific categories. So we're just going to stay really general and talk about the 5 major different types of land on Earth. Or I should say different types of environments, because one of them is aquatic, which is not on land, it's in water. Right? So the different types of environments on Earth. Okay, and they are deserts, forests, grasslands, tundra, and aquatic, which is the ocean, lakes, rivers, everything in the water. Okay, so these are the 5 that we are going to focus on over the next 2 weeks. The deserts, forests, grasslands, tundra, and aquatic biomes. Alright, so we are at our first question. Go ahead and pause your video and go to your Google form, please, and answer for me question number 1. How do we classify biomes? What are the 4 things that we're looking at, the 4 qualities of a biome that we are using to distinguish between deserts, forests, grasslands, tundra, and aquatic? Awesome. So hopefully you have paused your video to answer the question, and then when you're ready you press play, and we're back again. And the answer is plants, animals, climate, and landscape. That's what we look at in order to classify a biome or categorize a biome. Look at what type of plants grow there, what type of animals grow or live in a certain place, what is the climate or the weather like, and then what does the land look like. That's how we're going to know what type of biome we're experiencing. Okay, so our first biome is the desert. The desert. Now, you guys know deserts are very dry areas, right? Usually when we think of desert, we think of big sandy places. So deserts cover about 1/5 of the Earth's surface, 20%. And they receive less than 10 inches of rain or any precipitation every year. So less than 10 inches, that is not very much rain. You guys, you remember me telling you that even in Colorado, sometimes we get 10 inches of rain or snow in one night or in one storm. So for the desert to get less than that in a whole year is pretty crazy, right? So the desert is the driest biome, and most animals there are well adapted for a dry place, right? So they have abilities to either store water, or they just have evolved to have less of a need for water, right? They can drink water once every couple weeks, for example, for some reptiles. And there are 4 main types of deserts. So you have hot and dry deserts, semi-arid deserts, coastal deserts, or cold deserts. So we are going to break down all of these different biomes and go into detail on each biome. But for today, I just want you to have a general idea of the 5 different types. Okay, so deserts are dry places, but true or false, deserts are not always hot. And that's true. Sometimes deserts are hot and sometimes deserts are cold deserts, like the Gobi Desert in China. So, even though a desert is a dry place, we often think of deserts as being a very hot place also, but not always. It could be hot or cold. The main thing about a desert is that it's lacking water, right? It gets less than 10 inches of precipitation each year. Okay, so go to your Google form, go ahead and pause your video and answer question number 2. Fill in the blanks of this sentence. all deserts are blank, but not all deserts are blank. Awesome. You could have said, all deserts are dry, but not all deserts are hot. Or all deserts are dry, but not all deserts are cold. Sweet. Our next biome is forests. So the main thing about a forest is that it has trees. Forests have trees. So forests cover about 1/3, or about 33%, of the Earth's surface. Forest biomes are filled with large trees and other smaller plants, and usually lots and lots of animals as well. So there are lots of different types of forests, or 3 main different types of forests, and forests can exist all over the world, right? And there are millions of different species that thrive in a forest, different species of plants, species of insects, different species of animals, right? They're very rich places full of life. So 3 major types of forests that we'll learn about in these coming weeks are tropical, temperate, and boreal, right? So you can think of these as kind of hot, medium, and cold. The tropical forests are the hot rainforests, right, that are centered around the equator. Temperate forests are the type of forests that we have here in Colorado, right? So the mild forests that do see winter still, right? And you have a combination of deciduous and coniferous trees. And then you have boreal forests, which are more in the Arctic regions, right? Closer to the tundra, colder environments where there's lots of snow and a little bit less life, right? Fewer animals because it's harder to survive there. So true or false, some forests have only 2 seasons, wet and dry. What do you think? Ta-da! That's true. Rainforests, tropical rainforests, have a rainy season and they have a dry season. So some forests go through all 4 seasons and some forests have only 2. All right, so pause your video. We're on to question number 3. What are 3 types of forests? What are the 3 types of forests? And if you need to rewind or go back in your video to find the answer, you can do that. Okay, awesome. So you should have written tropical, temperate, and boreal. Tropical, temperate, boreal forests. Fantastic. Our third biome today is grasslands. So obviously, it's right there in the name. The main thing about a grassland is that there are big fields of grass. Lots of grass, which usually leads to lots of grazing animals, right? So herbivores, which like to eat grass and plants, animals like cows and sheep, horses, and as you see in this picture right here, zebra, right? Lots of antelope, all those kind of animals, animals with hooves, eat grass. So you often find herds of these animals in the grassland, as well as their predators, right? So grasslands are big open areas that receive between 10 and 30 inches of rain per year. So is that more or less than the desert? Let's see. This is less rain than a forest receives and more than a desert receives. So a grassland is somewhere in between a desert and a forest. A forest has to get more rain because it's supporting all of these trees, right? It's growing all of this plant life and also supporting lots of animal life. In the grassland, there's lots of plant and animal life as well, but there's not quite enough rain to support a ton of big trees. So it gets less rain than a forest, but more rain than a desert. So in a desert, there usually aren't fields and fields of grasses because there's not enough moisture to support that much plant life. So grassland is somewhere in between. We have lots of grasslands in Colorado. If you just travel east of here and start going towards Kansas, you hit what we call the Great Plains, right? Kansas and Nebraska and Oklahoma. If you've ever driven out there, there's just fields and fields of mostly flat land, just filled with grass. Sometimes we call them prairies or meadows or plains, right? Those are synonyms for grasslands. So there are two main types of grasslands. And here in this picture you see this ostrich. It's probably grasslands down in Australia. So there are two main divisions of grasslands. Tropical grasslands, which are also called savannas. So tropical being the hotter and wetter version. Those are called savannas. And then you have temperate grasslands. So here in the United States, we have more temperate grasslands because of our latitude, right? How high up we are, or our distance from the equator. And then if you get closer to the equator, you usually find savannas. So in Africa, there are a lot of savannas, which are like grasslands, but they get a little bit more moisture. So they have typically a few more trees than a grassland. A few more trees and usually a little bit more wildlife as well. Those places, everything needs water to survive, right? So places that have access to water can support more life. That makes sense. Okay, so true or false? Grasslands receive less rain than a desert. False. Grasslands receive more rain than a desert. Deserts are definitely at the bottom of the list for the amount of precipitation they receive. They are the driest biome. Deserts and tundras. We'll get to tundras in a second. So go ahead and pause your video. Let's go to question number 4. How much does it rain in the grassland? How many inches of rain on average does a grassland get each year? So different sources will give you different answers, but a grassland gets about 10 to 30 inches of rain each year. Approximately. Fantastic. Okay, so now we're on to the tundra biome. One of my favorites, the alpine tundra. The tundra is the coldest of all the biomes. It is known for its frost-molded landscapes, extremely low temperatures, very little precipitation, poor nutrients, and short growing seasons. So that's a lot of information, but what all of these details should tell you is that it's difficult for living things to survive in this place, unless you're well adapted. Okay, so a tundra, another way to think of the tundra is the frozen desert. The frozen desert. It gets just about as much precipitation as a desert, which is not very much, right? Very, very little each year. Less than 10 inches of precipitation of rain and snow every year. But there's typically more access to water in the tundra because lots of things are covered with ice and stay frozen all year. That's one of the things about the tundra, is that the ground stays frozen. It's one reason why it is hard for things to grow there, right? There's something called permafrost, where most of the soil is hard and frozen throughout the year. So it makes it hard for large plants to dig their roots into the soil, like trees. Trees don't grow in the tundra. You might get small plants like some moss and some flowers, some grasses, which have really shallow roots, but everything deep down in the soil is too cold for big plants to grow there. Okay, so there are two main types of tundra, the Arctic tundra and the alpine tundra. Arctic means North Pole, right, up in the north. So the Arctic tundra is in the Arctic Circle. is the cold, icy landscapes that are in the North Pole. Alpine tundra is something that you can find even in Colorado. Alpine means mountainous, right? So at the tops of mountains, once you go above tree line and trees can no longer grow there, that area, that biome is the tundra, the alpine tundra. So the Arctic tundra can be found near the South Pole, true or false? Boop, you're right. That would be false. That was a bit of a trick question. The Arctic tundra can be found near the North Pole, not the South Pole. Arctic is the north and Antarctic is the south. Alrighty, so pause your video and let's go to question number 5. What is unique about the tundra? What is unique about the tundra? So you could have told me multiple things. You could tell me it's the coldest biome. You could tell me the tundra is like the frozen desert. You could tell me the tundra is at the North Pole. Lots of things are unique about the tundra. All right, and the last biome of our 5 is the aquatic biome. The aquatic biome is the one that covers most of our planet because it includes the ocean. So about 3/4 or 75% of Earth's surface is covered with water. Water makes up the largest part of the biosphere, or we call it the hydrosphere, right? It makes up its own sphere, and it covers nearly 75% of the Earth's surface. So the aquatic biome is divided into 2 parts, freshwater or saltwater, which we also call marine water, right? So we have the ocean, which covers most of the Earth. So most of our aquatic biomes are saltwater biomes in the ocean. And then we have some freshwater biomes, which we'll talk about this week, like biomes inside of lakes and rivers and ponds, and also places like swamps and marshes. We will talk about all of those. So even though saltwater biomes are the majority of the aquatic biomes, most of the ones that we're going to encounter in our lifetime are freshwater here on land. Unless you become a marine biologist or an avid scuba diver. Here we go. So true or false, the aquatic biome covers about 3/4 of the Earth's surface. And that is true. 3/4 or about 75%. Okay, so pause your video and you are on to question number 6. What are the 2 types of aquatic biome? 2 types of aquatic biome. And you could have said freshwater and saltwater, or freshwater and marine. Fantastic. So quick review, what are biomes? A biome is a large area on Earth with its own unique combination of plants, animals, climate, and landscapes. And so they're big areas. It's not just a small patch of trees, right? It's the whole forest. It's not just one little hill, right? It's the whole prairie or the whole plains. And the major biomes, again, scientists disagree. Some say that there are 5 biomes, some say there's 7, some say there's 9. And that's because, you know, as you saw as we went through these biomes, there are different categories and you can get more and more specific. So with forests, you could call tropical forest, temperate forest, and boreal forest. Each of those could be its own biome in the scientist's eyes, right, or in your eyes. Or same with grasslands, right? You could call a grassland a totally different biome from a savanna. Or an alpine tundra could be different from an Arctic tundra. So for some scientists, they say that there are, 7 or 9 or up to 19 different biomes. But we're going to keep it simple and just talk about just these 5. Okay? So deserts, forests, grasslands, tundra, and aquatic. Those are the biomes we learned today. So pause your video. You're on to your last question on your Google form. Tell me, what are the 5 biomes? What are the 5 biomes? List them off for me. And then you are finished for the day. You are ready to go and finished with the lesson, I should say. You're ready to go and take your DOL. And then after DOL, you may do your appropriate level of LSAE work. All right. Nice job. Good work. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will talk to you later. Bye.